Help! I am trapped in an underground parking garage with no exit. The traffic was heavy in downtown Toronto during rush hour. Driving slowly, we made our way along roads crammed with other cars, bike messengers, streetcars, and jaywalking pedestrians. Tall buildings towered over us all around glass-walled skyscrapers and concrete behemoths. Stopped at a red light adjacent to an alley. The stench of a dumpster overfilled with week-old seafood waste and used diapers wafted over, making me gag. We were on our way to a baseball game and my brother had found a cheap parking lot online. The only catch was it was a bit of a hike to the Rogers Center where the Blue Jays played their games. It was taking forever to get to the discount parking place, immersed in the heavy traffic. At one point it took us 15 minutes just to make a right turn, due to the constant crush of pedestrians and car traffic. It was a hot day and I was getting sick of driving, sick of other people flaunting their utter contempt for every single traffic law, not to mention basic human decency. The idea of 30 more minutes fighting through city streets was too much to bear, and I pulled into the next underground parking garage I saw, telling my brother Noel that I would pay whatever the cost was myself. He looked shocked. This place would likely be triple the cost, but shrugged it off and said I could do what I liked. The steel sliding door rolled up on its tracks to let us in, then closed down shut behind us, drenching the tunnel in near total darkness. I had to stop the car, turning on my headlights to see as we wound our way downwards into the parking structure. There were very few signs in the dimly lit garage, only one-way street arrows pointing to the left, then to the right, telling us where to go. All the parking spots were filled near the top, so we continued going down the ramps, deeper and deeper into the parking structure. Cars were parked in every single spot, and there were none to be had as we went down through levels A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. Wow, this is starting to get ridiculous, I said as we entered section T. I've never seen a parking garage that goes down this far, Noel marveled as we turned another corner and descended even deeper. I started feeling dizzy from the constant turning in circles going down the ramps of the parking structure. Slowing down, I felt woozy for a moment, then started driving again. Slowly at first. It felt like it was hard to breathe so far down beneath the earth. The air thick and suffocating. This place is huge, Noel said. As we got down to level X, it was starting to get more and more unsettling. Driving downwards in the darkness, it was just a never-ending sea of black cars. I noticed, every single one looked identical after a while, like they were mirror images of each other. They had dark tinted windows and no logo to distinguish the brand, make, or model. This place is starting to creep me out. Can we go back? Like, just reverse out of here. Man, there's nobody behind you. I tried to go backwards, but found there was a sliding steel door blocking the path going back up. It seemed they were automated to let us go through, but then came back down once we were past. All of them functioned seamlessly on sensors so that we hadn't even noticed them. But I imagined dozens of them, leading all the way back up, blocking our path. Something occurred to me suddenly. Have you seen any doors other than those? Any stairs leading up out of here? He shook his head. Lines of apprehension furrowed into his face. No. And I haven't seen any people down here other than us, either. We got out of the car together and tried to lift up the steel door, straining with all of my strength. I tried to pull it up from the ground. It wouldn't budge. There was no help intercom or any other way of getting a hold of the people running this place. Frustrated, I pulled out the tire iron from the trunk and drove it between the pavement and the door, trying to pry it open. It wouldn't budge, even with all of my body weight trying to force it upwards. My hands were getting cold and going numb, and I realized it was chilly down here in the lower levels, much colder than the balmy summer night up on street level. This was the first moment we began to suspect something was really wrong. Still, we had no choice but to keep going downwards. It seemed there was nowhere else to go. After waiting for what seemed like hours for someone else to come through the door, we decided to try going forwards a little ways more. I just hoped at some point the ramps would lead us out and would bring us back up to the surface, since that had been my experience with parking garages in the past. Why would anyone build an underground parking facility with no exit? After all, I started driving again, my hands gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. My breaths were coming far too quickly and my heart was beating fast. I told myself to try and stay calm. Tried to convince myself this was okay. This was normal. Suddenly the letters on the walls indicating which level we were on began to change. After the letter Z, they stopped being recognizable from our alphabet, or any other that I had seen on Earth. They appeared ancient and druidic, carved into the stone with precision. Other than that, the place was the same dim, flickering fluorescence glowing overhead. Black cars going on forever as we went down each row. Only the light seemed to be getting dimmer with each level we went down. And it was getting colder, too. I turned on the heater, trying to warm up the car. That was when I noticed my breath was pluming frostily into the air with each breath. As was my brother's. "What is this place?" Noel asked. I didn't have any answer. The structure made no sense. It wasn't really a parking garage, though. That was becoming abundantly clear. We kept going down, deeper and deeper, feeling like Indiana Jones and his companions exploring a never-ending underground cavern. But there was nothing to see, other than rows of black cars one after another, each level the same until they weren't. At a certain point, the architecture started to look wonky. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It was like a kid had drawn up the plans for it, instead of a professional engineer or architect. The cars were crammed closer together in places, almost touching each other at strange angles. In other sections things were spaced far apart, and we almost could have squeezed our car in between two others almost but not quite. And even if we could, there was nowhere to go. We had already established that there were no doors leading to stairs anywhere, no elevators or other points of egress, either. As we went down to the next level the car's roof almost scraped against the ceiling, the wheels nearly lifting off the ground as we rounded the bend on the uneven ramp. "Okay, this place is seriously freaking me out," my brother said, gripping the oh shit handle on his side of the car. "Me too. Man. Me too." Clearly going down further was not working. We were just going deeper and deeper into the dark abyss of madness that this place held within it. But getting out of the car was no longer a viable option. We were dressed in t-shirts and shorts, since it was a hot summer day outside. But I could only guess how cold the temperature in the parking garage was at this point. I had the heat cranked up to maximum and we were both still shivering. The gaslight began to flash yellow, catching my eye. I didn't mention this fact to Noel. Not yet. I didn't want to scare him any more than he already was. We continued going downwards. The light now sparse and separated by huge gaps of distance. Sometimes only one defective light was flickering for an entire level, then absent entirely on others. Our surroundings continued getting stranger and stranger, no longer resembling a parking garage anymore, but a cavernous hellscape. The darkness and the feeling of suffocating beneath the ground was becoming impossible to ignore. I began to hyperventilate with claustrophobia, feeling that we were on our way downwards towards our inevitable deaths trapped far beneath the earth, or perhaps something much worse than death. Perhaps we would simply continue driving downwards forever into blackness, round and round in spiraling circles. Finally, the car began to sputter and die as it ran out of gas. I wished more than anything at that moment I had driven around with more than a quarter of a tank. We would have had more time to think of a plan if I had just sprung for a fill-up the last time I'd visited the gas station. Noel didn't seem surprised. He had probably noticed the gas light too and just decided not to say anything about it. As the car coasted to a stop in the pitch blackness, I looked around. It was pure darkness in all directions. We couldn't even see a few feet in front of the car, despite the headlights still running off the battery. The darkness was getting thicker, more tenacious and suffocating all around us. I imagined it wouldn't be long before it finished us, invading our lungs and our bloodstreams like a noxious gas, paralyzing us with dread before painfully poisoning us to death with our own terror. The car battery died abruptly, much faster than it should have, and we were plunged completely into darkness. I turned the key back and forth to no avail. The battery was done for. And so were we. Sounds could be heard outside the car. Sounds of movement, scurrying noises and scratching claws raking against the steel doors of various nearby automobiles. Long, ear-splitting screeches. Getting closer. Something began to bump against the right side of the car, jostling it to the other side as we shivered from the cold and grabbed hold of whatever we could to brace ourselves for what might come next. It felt like something huge was brushing up against the car, like a huge worm, beneath the surface of the earth, using these tunnels as passage. For a while it felt like the car would tip over, as the sound of the thing moving past outside dragged on and on forever. But eventually it ceased and the car settled back on its axles. It was silent again in the darkness, freezing cold and lonely, despite the presence of my brother mere inches away. I felt as if I would die down there. My life began to flash before my eyes as I waited for death to come in whatever form it would take. I remembered my phone suddenly. In my pocket, the screen would give off a little bit of light, and that was a relief. There was still a signal somehow, even all the way down here, and just enough battery to type this up and send it out to you all. As a warning, if you happen upon this parking garage, the one with too many levels, don't go any further down. Stay near the surface. Get out while you still can. And if you see a parking attendant, please tell him we're stuck down here on level. Help US. Link. EM Android app button source share. Part 2 link. TCC link.